Mostly Movies, where we mostly discuss movies mostly. I'm your host, Dan Siri. Taking a little break. I was watching a few silent films on YouTube, which, by the way, has become a recent obsession of mine. This one was Underworld. It was from 1927. One of the most amazing things about YouTube is these films are not really. Some of them still have a copyright, but they're movies that nobody really cares about. They're sort of more or less as good as Lost. But you can find many great silent films on YouTube, which is pretty awesome. And they're great to learn from visually. If you're a visual artist or if you want to learn about the camera and how it works, these are some really good films to go to, especially the German expressionist films of the 20s. Very, very impressive stuff. You can find some Buster Keaton, you can find early Chaplin, you can find great stuff right here on YouTube. Just look up silent movies and you'll find lists of the best silent movies, and they're pretty much all free, you know. It's July, so that means it's the half off Criterion sale at Barnes & Noble, price matched on Amazon. I do like the Criterion Collection. I am a fan, but I'm not getting any this July. Probably not going to get any in November either when they have the November sale. It's also the same time there's a half price sale on the Arrow Video catalog, which is great, but also like Criterion, even on sale, it's expensive. So for those of us who are broke as Felix Unger, I'm basically going to introduce some ideas about how you guys can build your collection or how you can be a part of Criterion without spending a lot of money. Because even on sale, it's way too much for these movies. Step one is the local library. You will find that not only is the library a great find for physical media, you can also find several great Criterion discs, particularly if they have a foreign language section. You can find lots of great movies that way. I just recently rented Easy Rider from my local library. It's due back tomorrow. And I hadn't seen the movie in a long time, and I've been wanting to get it from the collection since they released it, because I really like Easy Rider. I feel like it's, even though it's made for a generation before me, I can still relate to it, and I can still relate to the message of the movie, which is basically, two young men looking for freedom. They're looking for the spirit of America because they don't want to hear about the consumerism or the everyday post-war Eisenhower America. They want to find their own land of the free and home of the brave. And that's one of the things I like about Easy Rider. I liked it a lot more watching it as an adult than I did the last time I'd seen it. I believe I was just out of high school and I was kind of like, but I see it now as an adult and I really get it and I really respond to it. The film is basically like a lyrical, it's sort of like a poem about America. It's like a tone poem, not a huge narrative, but it's just an interesting movie. And I love the soundtrack, and I love how the soundtrack is like another character in the film. So, Criterion disc, and it's free because it's from the library. You can find a lot of great discs there. Step two is a streaming service called Canopy, Kanopy. It is sort of like Tubi for serious movie buffs. It is definitely a great streaming service. The only catch is you get 4 rentals a month. However, they have a whole section devoted to the Criterion Collection, and you can stream these movies for free. You can only stream 4 a month, but you can watch them for free. I wrote a few titles down here in the Mostly Movies Home Companion. Jules and Jim, The Great Dictator, Ikiru, Wages of Fear, great. Seven Samurai is a classic. 8.5, Fires on the Plain, Ashes and Diamonds, and about another 60 or 70 titles or more. So if you like Criterions, if you want to watch these classic movies, but you don't want to pay $40 or $24 on sale, you can watch them right there on Canopy for free. Because I believe, as much as I understand consumerism and I understand people have to make a profit, or especially if they're still living, directors, actors, people do deserve their royalties and they do deserve, getting paid for these things. And the companies that distribute them do deserve a little bit of money too. But at the same time, there's a lot of movies, particularly old movies, that it's like, once it reaches a certain age, who is making money off of this movie? I mean, it's just like it should basically be, given away. at that point. Once a movie reaches about 80, 90 years old, I mean, why are you still trying to make money off of it? You know, I mean, I understand, you know, movies today are not that great. But if a movie is old, like really old, like just you know, put it out in the public. The way, you know, certain classic works of literature. I usually don't buy many classic books. I'll usually just get them from the library or listen to the audiobook because, you know, why should I buy another copy of, you know, A Christmas Carol or something like that? And then another resource is eBay. You can find cheap Criterion Blu-rays, especially if it's coming out on 4K, like the case of Princess Bride or Dazed and Confused. But I saw The Heiress on there for $16, including shipping, or Umberto D for about 14 bucks, including shipping. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, $16, including shipping. So, and another issue too with the Criterion is rewatchability. Now, I wrote down some classic films here. They're all great. Let me just read them off to you. Seven Samurai, Raging Bull, Kagemusha, Bicycle Thieves, The Parallax View, even Citizen Kane. Okay, these movies all have one thing in common. They're masterpieces. And they're great to have even if they're just on the shelf, just to see them on the shelf. But at the same time, too, are these movies that we watch a lot? Are these movies that we watch all the time? Maybe there are people that watch Raging Bull on a regular basis. I can only watch it every 7 to 8 years. Same thing for Citizen Kane and a few other movies too. And The Parallax View is great, but again, it's the kind of movie you got to be in the mood for. And most of the movies in the collection have this in common. They just came out with After Hours, which I would want to pick up. The only problem is it isn't even just the money. It's when's the last time I watched After Hours? I've had the DVD a long time. I've seen it once or twice in like 20 years. You know, is it a good movie? Yes, it's a really good movie. It's a great movie. But it's all about rewatchability. Am I going to watch this enough to warrant buying it again? So what I did is I actually picked out 4 titles here that are movies that I watch all the time, that are basically films that are in the collection that I am a big fan of, and I watch at least once a year or every 2 to 3 years. I always feel like if you have a movie on DVD or physical media and you haven't watched it within 5 years, even if you're lazy and you just want to watch it streaming, if you own a certain movie, you haven't watched it in 5 or 6 years, it's kind of, you think to yourself, like, well, is this movie really an essential film? Is this really a movie that really means that much to me? Or is it just another comfort item on the shelf? Like we have a lot of books that we don't really read, but we're just happy that they're there on the shelf. And I understand that, and I'm a big I'm a big hypocrite because there's so many movies there are movies I bought on DVD 20 years ago that I haven't even watched, or I maybe seen them on video and I bought the DVD and haven't watched the DVD. You know, so I'm as part of the problem as anybody else. I won't lie to you, but I'm going to pick out a few movies here. Okay. First one up is Dazed and Confused from 1993, Richard Linklater. Again, a movie that is a very strange story of me in this movie. When I first saw it, I was kind of like I was head first into the indie movement. You know, Kevin Smith and Tarantino and Linklater was a part of that, and all these directors were great at the time of the independent films. But this was a movie that has grown on me, and it wasn't until I was really an adult. When I was like a snot-nosed high school kid, I thought it was all right. But as I watch it, the older I get, I like it more and more, and I find it more and more relatable, much more as an adult than I did as a teenager. It was sort of like the John Hughes movies, which I thought were okay when I was in high school, but when I left high school and I got into real life, I started to realize, like, that I liked Ferris Bueller a lot more and The Breakfast Club a lot more as an adult than I did, you know, as a kid when I saw them. And I'm not a big fan of 16 Candles. I'm sorry. I have tremendous problems with that movie. Not just the ending, which is bad enough, but there are things in that movie that are just horrendous. But I do like Molly Ringwald in the film. She's great. Anthony Michael Hall is great, but the movie has some really strong issues. Dazed and Confused is great. It has a great documentary about an hour long about the making of the movie. And it's really a fascinating look at that time of growing up in the late 70s. I'm actually reading the book, All Right, All Right, All Right, An Oral History of the Making of Dazed and Confused, which is really, really a great book. I got to get back to it. All right, next up, another one I watch every year, every couple of years, Repo Man. This movie is from 1984, directed by Alex Cox. It's an amazing film. It's just basically this, it's a comedy, it's punk rock, it's a mystery, it's a science fiction. It's just a mashup of all the things I like in one movie. The soundtrack is amazing. And most people wouldn't think I'd like this movie because I'm a total square, but even squares can appreciate a movie this cool. The commentaries are very good. The one of the best things on there is called Harry Zen Stanton, where they interview Harry Dean Stanton, and he talks about his philosophy on life, and it's really interesting. And there's also an alternate version, the TV version that Alex Cox helped create for when it aired on broadcast TV some time ago. That was actually interesting to watch because it was sort of like the Mallrats TV version that was on the Arrow disc a few years ago. Yeah, I mean, this is not a movie I would probably ever watch on TV, but if you have kids and you want to introduce them to cool cinema, but you don't want them to deal with all the R-rated content, you can actually show this to your kids that are probably around 8 or 9, and they can still basically experience the film in a version that you don't have to worry so much about the content. And it kind of reminds me of, I used to actually tape a lot of the TV versions of movies. Don't worry, Hollywood Studios, all those tapes have been thrown away. But I used to tape, like Caddyshack would be on, or the Blues Brothers, or something like that. We used to tape them off of TV because they would cut out a lot of stuff that we couldn't watch as kids. And I have to say, like, the Blues Brothers is one of my favorite movies. And I didn't see the theatrical cut until the DVD came out, in basically like the late 90s, early 2000s. So all my memories of that film, watching that film as a young kid and growing up and really falling in love with that, were on TV. So I do like these alternate versions, and I do like the idea that more people can experience the film, at a younger age. I was the type of kid that would probably see the theatrical version as a kid of Repo Man if I could get my hands on it, because it's just much better than the TV version. The TV version is just more of a curiosity, but I do like it. Okay, next up is The Princess Bride from 1987, directed by Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner had a really tremendous hot streak in the 80s and very early 90s. And then he made one movie and his career basically tailspinned after that. It's such a shame, too, because he's such a brilliant, brilliant director. And I'll say that to the end. No matter what movies he made afterwards, if you think of the films he made in the 80s, like Spinal Tap or The Princess Bride or, Stand By Me, that movie's just amazing, except for the very beginning when it gives away the ending. But I usually skip over that part. But great director. It's a beautiful love story. The features are okay. The transfer's a little iffy. But I don't care. It's The Princess Bride. It's a great movie. It's a classic. Definitely an American classic. If you haven't seen it, please, you got to watch it. It's great. And lastly, another one that I watch all the time, Night of the Living Dead. Great movie, directed by George Romero, 1968. I was right. I would have said 69 or 7, but it was 1968. And this was a great, great movie. The birth of the zombie genre, pretty much. What was so great, what a lot of people don't realize about horror movies, and I love horror as a genre, but what people don't understand about these great pioneers of modern horror, like George Romero and Tobe Hooper and Carpenter, those three in particular, and yeah, Wes Craven too, I would include, is that they took horror out of the gothic. They took horror out of the castles and out of the dark, spooky laboratories and the cauldrons and all that, and they basically put it in your neighborhood. And that's what made it so scary and so original. And to this day, it makes it really scary. Because basically, like, horror can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be a big haunted castle or some faraway land. You can have terror right on your own street. And that is one of the great things. They also have a good alternate version of the film called Night of the Anubis, if I'm saying it right, which is basically Romero's work print for Night of the Living Dead. And there's a lot of great ways to read the film. You could read it as a take on the older generation kind of killing the younger generation by sending them to war. You can look at the civil rights angle because the main character of the film was a African American, and there's lots and lots of social political commentary that you can gather from the film. Or if you want to just watch a cool zombie movie, it's there for you. So I definitely recommend Night of the Living Dead. It's a classic, and it inspired so many movies. The Walking Dead, all these other things that have come since, definitely owe a debt to Romero. So that's about it. Everybody have a happy July, and I hope you can afford some Criterions. I'm a substitute teacher, and I also work in an after-school program, and there's just no work to be found because it's July, and just got to kind of hold out until September comes, and then October, the best month of the year for scary movies and Halloween and just the weather change. And October is great. It's a very inspiring month. As an artist, it's the month that really, I feel, recharges my batteries and makes me want to write more and do more artistic things because of all the great things that happen in the fall with the seasons changing. But if you can't, I gave you guys some good options. Now I'm going to go back to watching Underworld. So if you guys have any questions on classic movies, anything, or if you just want to talk, I'm around. All right, this is Mostly Movies signing off.